Hey history buffs and curiosity seekers, my name is Nelly and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the dusty annals of time to unearth some truly bizarre ancient festivals. From rituals involving human sacrifice to celebrations of the undead, humanity has always found unique and sometimes terrifying ways to party. So buckle up, because you're about to discover the top 10 most bizarre ancient festivals. Before we get started, if you love uncovering the strange and wonderful past, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our historical adventures. At number 10, we have the Anthesteria. Don't let the name fool you. While it translates to the Festival of Flowers, it was actually one of the spookiest dates on the Athenian calendar. Held in February to celebrate the maturing of the previous year's wine, this wasn't your average wine tasting. It was a 3-day event where the veil between the living and the dead grew dangerously thin. Day 1, Pythia jar opening. Imagine the tension in the air as citizens opened their large storage jars of wine for the first time. They didn't just drink, they poured libations to the god Dionysus, but with a wary eye on the shadows. You see, the Greeks believed that when those jars opened, the souls of the dead, the keres, crept out along with the wine's aroma. Day 2 chose the Day of the Pitchers. This was arguably the weirdest happy hour in history. In total silence, everyone sat at separate tables, drinking an entire pitcher of wine in a race. Why the silence? Because the ghosts were officially among them. People smeared their doors with pitch and chewed buckthorn to keep the spirits from entering their bodies. Even the temples were roped off to keep the ghosts out of sacred spaces. Day 3, Chaitre, the Day of Pots. The finale was a somber funeral for the living. No one drank wine on this day. Instead, they cooked a massive pot of mixed grains and seeds, a panspermia offered to Hermes, the guide of souls. Coming in at number 9, we have the Lemuria. If you think your house is haunted, the Romans had a DIY solution that involved bare feet, black beans, and a lot of midnight chanting. While the Parentalia in February was for honoring friendly ancestors, the Lemuria in May was for the Lemures, the restless, angry, and hungry ghosts who didn't get a proper burial or died prematurely. These weren't spirits you wanted to invite for dinner. These were spirits that wanted to drag you back to the underworld with them. The midnight ritual. The ritual was led by the paterfamilias, the head of the household. Imagine the scene, it's the dead of night. The house is silent. He rises barefoot, making a specific fico sign with his hand, thumb between fingers, to ward off the evil eye. He washes his hands in spring water, then takes a mouthful of black beans. He walks through the house, spitting the beans out behind him. He doesn't look back. He believes the ghosts are following him, picking up the beans. He says 9 times, "These I cast, with these beans I redeem me and mine." At number 8, we have the Thesmophoria. This wasn't just a festival, it was a total takeover. For 3 days every autumn, the women of Athens completely occupied the hillside of the Pnyx, the very place where men usually conducted politics, and banned all males on pain of death. This festival honored Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, and her daughter Persephone, but it wasn't about flower crowns and sunshine, it was about the sacred rot. Day 1, the Ascent. Women would trek to the sanctuary carrying supplies for a 3-day camp, but the real work had happened months earlier. During a previous festival, secret balers, women who had purified themselves, lowered piglets, doe snakes, and pine cones into deep, dark pits called megara. Day 2, the Fast. This was the day of mourning. The women sat on the ground on beds made of willow, a plant believed to suppress sexual desire, and refused to eat. They were mimicking Demeter's grief when her daughter was kidnapped to the underworld. The atmosphere was somber, silent, and intense. Day 3, the Beautiful Birth. This is where it gets truly bizarre. The balers would descend into the pits to retrieve the now-rotted remains of those piglets and offerings. At number 7, we have the Lupercalia. Forget chocolates and roses. Ancient Rome's precursor to Valentine's Day involved sacrificial blood, goatskin thongs, and a wild sprint through the city streets. Every February, a group of young noblemen known as the Luperci, the Brothers of the Wolf, gathered at the Lupercal Cave, the very spot where legend says a she-wolf suckled Romulus and Remus. The bloody initiation, the ritual began with a shock. 2 goats and a dog were sacrificed. The Luperci had their foreheads smeared with the bloody knife, which was then wiped clean with wool dipped in milk. But here's the kicker. Once the blood was wiped off, the young men were required to laugh out loud. This wasn't just a party, it was a psychological transformation into wolfmen. The race of the Februa. The men then cut the hides of the sacrificed goats into long strips called februa, from which we get the name February. Stripped nearly naked and smelling of blood and milk, they began a frenzied run around the base of the Palatine Hill. At number 6, we have the Saturnalia. Imagine if, for 1 week every December, your boss had to cook you dinner, you could gamble in the middle of the street, and wearing your pajamas in public was mandatory. This was the festival of Saturn, the god of agriculture and time. It celebrated a mythical golden age when everyone was equal and the earth provided food without work. To recreate that paradise, the Romans basically deleted their own social rules. The Great Reversal, the most famous part of Saturnalia, was the role reversal. Slaves were treated as equals or even superiors. In many households, the masters would dress in common clothes and serve a banquet to their slaves first. Slaves were allowed to speak their minds, joke at their master's expense, and ignore their usual duties. It was a pressure release valve for a society built on strict hierarchy. The king of misrule, each household would also appoint a Saturnalian prince or lord of misrule. This was often a low-ranking member of the house or a child. Whatever ridiculous command they gave, you had to follow. Jump into cold water, sing a song while naked, paint your face green. It was all in the spirit of Io Saturnalia, the traditional shout of the festival. Gift-giving and the pileus. Romans swapped their formal heavy togas for synthesis, colorful, loose-fitting tunics, basically ancient leisure suits. Even more importantly, everyone wore the pileus, a felt cap traditionally worn by freed slaves. At number 5, we have the Egyptian festival of drunkenness. Or tech, if you've ever used the excuse that you're drinking for a good cause, the Egyptians took that to a cosmic level. They weren't just drinking to have fun, they were drinking to keep a bloodthirsty goddess from eating the entire human race. The myth of the lioness, the legend goes that the sun god Ra became angry with humans for plotting against him. He sent his eye, the goddess Sekhmet, a terrifying deity with the head of a lioness, to punish them. But Sekhmet took the job a little too seriously. She began a slaughter so brutal that the Nile literally turned red with blood. Ra realized that if she didn't stop, there wouldn't be any humans left to worship him. The Great Deception. To trick her, Ra ordered 7,000 jars of beer to be dyed red with pomegranate juice or red ochre and spread across the fields. Sekhmet, thinking it was a sea of blood, drank until she became so intoxicated she couldn't hunt. She fell into a deep sleep and transformed back into Hathor, the gentle goddess of love. The celebration. Every year during the mid-August inundation of the Nile, Egyptians would reenact this. The goal: total, passed-out level intoxication. At number 4, we have the ancient roots of the Day of the Dead. While the modern festival is a beautiful mix of cultures, the original Aztec celebration, called Miquehuatl, lasted an entire month and was far more intense than a simple graveyard picnic. For the Aztecs, death wasn't an ending, it was a journey, and that journey was a nightmare. The 9 levels of Mictlan. The Aztecs believed that most people who died had to travel through Mictlan, a 9-level underworld filled with obstacles. We're talking about mountains that crashed together, winds that blew knives, and rivers of blood guarded by giant iguanas. It took 4 years to reach the final rest. The festival was designed to provide the energy and supplies the dead needed to survive this marathon. The Lord and Lady of Death. The festival was presided over by Mictlantecuhtli, the Lord of Death, and his wife Mictlantecuhtli. These weren't scary villains, they were the keepers of the bones. During the festival, the living would place food, water, and even small Xoloitzcuintli dog statues on altars. Why the dogs? Because a spirit needed a loyal yellow dog to help them swim across the final, deep river of the underworld. Celebrating with the bones. Unlike many cultures that feared the remains of the dead, the Aztecs embraced them. They would often keep the skulls of ancestors as trophies of life and rebirth, displaying them during the rituals. At number 3, we have the Feast of Ishtar. If there was a rock star of the ancient world, it was Ishtar. She was the Mesopotamian goddess of love, beauty, and sex, but also of war and political power. Her festivals were legendary, a heady, chaotic mix of the sensual and the violent. The sacred marriage, Hieros Gamos. The centerpiece of her major festivals was the sacred marriage. The king of the city-state would represent the god Dumuzi, and a high priestess would represent Ishtar. In a grand, ritualized ceremony, they would unite to ensure the fertility of the land. It was believed that if the goddess wasn't satisfied, the crops wouldn't grow and the lions would devour the livestock. The gender-bending reverie, but here is where it gets truly bizarre for the time. Ishtar was a deity who turned men into women and women into men. During her festivals, her followers, known as the Kurguru and Asinu, would perform ecstatic dances while dressed in clothing of the opposite gender. They would carry masks, spindle whorls, and weapons, blurring the lines of identity in a wild, trance-like state. It was a time where social norms were completely dissolved in favor of divine ecstasy. The Lions Procession. The streets of cities like Babylon would be filled with the sound of clashing cymbals and reed pipes. Huge processions would pass through the Ishtar Gate, decorated with shimmering blue glazed bricks and depictions of lions, her sacred animal. At number 2, we have the Thargelia. While most Greek festivals were about wine and theatre, this one was about a cold, calculated ritual of expulsion. Held in honor of Apollo, the Thargelia was designed to purify the city of the previous year's bad luck, disease, and sin. And how did they do that? They used the pharmakos. The selection of the outcasts. The Greeks believed that the city was a living body, and like any body, it occasionally needed to purge its toxins. They would select 2 individuals, usually people from the lowest rungs of society, criminals, or those considered ugly or useless. These people were named the pharmakoi. The word comes from pharmakon, meaning both medicine and poison. The ritual humiliation. On the first day of the festival, these 2 people were treated like twisted royalty. They were fed the finest food at the city's expense, but then the mood shifted. They were draped in branches and led through the streets in a procession of shame. The citizens would pelt them with specialized plants, wild figs and squills, believing that these plants would draw out the bad energy of the city and absorb it into the bodies of the pharmakoi. The expulsion, the climax, was the exile. The 2 outcasts were driven out of the city gates with whips and stones. In some city-states, it stopped there. They were simply banned forever, carrying the city's bad vibes with them into the wilderness. Finally, at number 1, we reach the Aztec festival of Toxcatl. While the Aztecs performed many sacrifices, this was their masterpiece of ritual theater. It centered on the god Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, the god of fate, magic, and the night sky. The transformation. 1 year before the festival, the most handsome, flawless young captive was chosen. He had to have skin like silk and a voice like a bird. From that moment, he stopped being a prisoner and became the living incarnation of Tezcatlipoca. He was dressed in gold, flowers, and eagle feathers. For 365 days, the elite of the empire bowed to him. He walked the streets of Tenochtitlan playing a clay flute, and people wept with joy just to see him pass. The final month, 20 days before the festival, the god was given 4 beautiful women to be his ritual wives, representing the 4 goddesses of fertility. They feasted, danced, and lived in absolute luxury. But as the sun rose on the day of Toxcatl, the music stopped. The ascent, the young man was taken to a small temple across the lake. He said goodbye to his wives and began to climb the steps of the pyramid alone. On each step, he took one of the flutes he had played throughout the year and snapped it in half, symbolizing the breaking of his earthly life. From ghost parties to literal heart offerings, humanity has certainly had some wild ways to celebrate. Which of these bizarre festivals surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the ancient weird, make sure to like this video, share it with your history-loving friends, and subscribe for more fascinating dives into the past. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.